I think so.
For our top news, Coors didn't buy a Super Bowl ad. Instead, it wants into your dreams. That's the top news. I wonder what that's about. For technology, a car made up of a number of different suppliers, but a car, Stellantis, says it will be electric or hybrid by 2025, and that 98% of their models will be that. Our material story uses graphene for something else, for the protection of paintings. Paving the way, I guess, for novel methods in art preservation and restoration. In space, apparently that Mars has glowing auroras. How about that? And in environment, now that they're saying what Richard has been saying for some time, is that carbon must be pulled from the atmosphere. We've wasted so much time. In biology, do you want to have a how-to guide for creating something, an embryo that's both mouse and human? For human stuff, the declining birth rates, Richard says, are good news for life on Earth. And our last story, lab analysis says near meat, such as we can get nowadays, and meat are not equivalent nutritionally. So, Richard, what's this in our top story that Coors didn't buy a Super Bowl ad, it wants into your dreams?
Now, this story has several parts that I think are interesting. The first part of it is, I spent a good part of my career as a marketing guy, and so I'm sensitive to the issues of advertising and promotion and how you get your message across. And uh, Coors did something different this year, uh, not because they're clever, though maybe the cleverness is a part of it, but because uh, when buying ad time for the Super Bowl came, they actually were too late acting, and Anheuser-Busch uh, got exclusive rights to run beer ads in the Super Bowl. But so what Coors was trying to do is to find some other way to be able to promote their product, and they worked with some uh, scientists, professors of psychology, for example, at Harvard University, and uh, they had the idea of trying to figure out how to use things like ads to be able to get in a person's dreams so that they would have dreams that would end up encouraging them to buy Coors beer. Now, uh, they also, the article talked about uh, tests that they did to kind of verify what they were trying to do. And so they had some ads and they ran it with test subjects. And the test subjects, it's like you would see a 30-second ad, and then there was like a long, uh, kind of peaceful country bucolic scene that you would have, and it would just be on the screen, and it was 8 hours long. Nobody would watch it, I don't think, but they might have it on when they're asleep. And when they talked to people in their study, they got answers like, it made me I dreamed they would have these things where they had them connected to EEGs, and when they were involved in REM sleep, when they were dreaming, they'd wake them up and ask them what the dream was about. And one of the persons said they dreamed of waterfalls and snow and mountains. Another person said, I think it was something to do with Coors. And so they sure got the message. Uh, and so this is called targeted dream incubation, was the advertising strategy that they're doing. And that, you know, approaches like that are approaches to advertising that kind of get past the cognitive mind. And there are several issues with this, of course, and one of them is in a paper written by one of the researchers working in this area, a 2020 paper called Dream Engineering. Uh, One comment that he had within his paper was the question, can this be used for evil, authoritarian mind control? So that's one of the kind of issues. But there's another issue that is the kind of thing I run into when I do this, and that is that big parts of this story were advertising and were not the way it actually was. The story talks about Coors and their wanting to have an ad for the Super Bowl with its 100 million viewers. Well, they didn't run it on the Super Bowl. It was just on their website. So the only people who would see it are the people who are dedicated to go and find their website. Then, of course, there's the issue that nobody knows if this works, and nobody knows if there's any connection between what you dream and what you buy at the store the next day. And the other detail is instead of a scientific study, the people that were engaged were paid participants, and I think they were selected because they would be presentable on camera, uh, giving their comments for the ads. So, besides it being a funny way to try to advertise, the story that described it was made up of marketing fluff upon marketing fluff. Again, this kind of thing generally has my attention because I see there's going to be this progression in advertising where the advertisers try to get more internal with you, understanding how you're motivated, doing things like doing emotional analysis to see, for example, if when you see this ad, if your pupils are expanding, it means you're interested. So there's that level that they'll be using. And when the brain computer interfaces become a real popular thing, then this scares me to death because there we will have Facebook getting into the way you think so that when they present you the next ad, they can get more internally into how you're wired and sell you more stuff. Now, Carol and I have been challenging some of this stuff. We have an Alexa at home, and when we're around the Alexa now, sometimes we talk about wanting to buy a Lamborghini, and we're just waiting for the ads to show up for Lamborghinis in our internet feed.
Any thoughts?
There was something that I thought was interesting. I was reading something that said that some huge fraction of people who go to Google for information only look at the first page. So Google sells those positions on the first page to their advertisers and their other people willing to pay.
Yes.
So they always advise you to look beyond the first page when you Google information, if it's of critical importance.
And there are many media consultants now in the business of helping you improve your page rankings. And certainly they talk about, we'll help you get on the first page.
Yeah.
Well, Richard, in technology and electric vehicles, what's this about Stellantis? That apparently will have 90% of models being electric or hybrid by 2025. And what is Stellantis?
Well, the first thing is Stellantis is the biggest car company that nobody has heard of. It was made by the merger between Chrysler and Fiat and Peugeot. And the merger was an attempt for those three companies to build some kind of scale so that they could compete successfully against the likes of Toyota and General Motors. And Stellantis has been late getting started in the electric vehicle story, but this month their president has announced their plan to catch up. And he says by 2025, 98% of all its models in Europe and North America will have fully electric or plug-in gas electric hybrid versions. Now, that's not going to be 98% of their production. That's going to be an electric or hybrid version of cars that are probably also have gas versions available. So it's not quite as strong as he said. And to do this, then they are developing 4 fully electric hybrid vehicle platforms that have range from 500 kilometers to 800 kilometers. The last is almost 500 miles, so that's quite good range. And they are going to have 3 different electric drive modules for their 14 different car lines. So again, they're trying to build economies of scale in all of this. And they also are investing heavily in battery technologies. And they plan on reducing battery costs by more than 40% by 2024, and they're going to be using new battery chemistries. They're going to have a solid state battery that they introduce. And so there are substantial things that they're doing there. They also, as they're going out of the internal combustion engine business, they are converting plants that now make engines and transmissions into battery cell factories. And so they're making 5 big battery cell factories in Europe and America. So again, a big commitment to it. They have committed more than $35 billion on increasing their technology and developing new products. They're going to spend that's 35 billion in the next 5 years. And so they have seen that to survive in this market, they have to completely change the way that they're doing business, and they have a real ambitious plan to do so. It's more ambitious than I expected from a company like them, but they know that unless they do something like this, they're going to be out of business.
Any thoughts?
Well, the Peugeot and Fiat are very big names in Europe. Fiat, of course, is an Italian company, and Peugeot is French. But they also dominate a line of very small cars. They're really there in the business of bringing people from A to B without uh, overdoing luxury, like in the U.S., where
Uh-huh.
we've had the roomier roads and so on. So they could be, if they're right, that the market is all electric. They could become a dominant factor in the car business.
And they're one of the big companies. I think you're right. They're one of the big companies that is real active in the small car market, and they're going to have a bunch of models that are smaller vehicles. It's not going to be just the big expensive cars.
Yeah.
So
So,
again, change is coming.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, Richard, the next story is also about change using graphene for what's this? Protection of paintings? What's that?
Well, I like graphene, and whether I want to or not, almost every week I have another story about some new use of graphene. And this one is more out of left field than most of the graphene stories. And the exposure of colors that are used in artworks are subject to uh, damage from ultraviolet and visible light, especially in the presence of oxidating agents that are in the atmosphere. And this damage degrades the color and makes the art fade and yellow over time. And this can lead to irreversible damage where you lose some precious piece of art from hundreds of years ago. And presently, they try protecting them with varnishes and different kind of coatings, but those are really not good solutions. They're not permanent, and there comes a time when you have to remove them and work on them again. And when you remove them, it requires the use of solvents, and the solvents also attack the paint that they're trying to protect. So that's the problem. And some clever Europeans then had the idea to use graphene veils for the protection of paintings from this environmental degradation. Uh, they the graphene they use is a flexible, transparent film, and it's produced by a chemical process called vapor deposition. That's something I'm familiar with from the semiconductor business because that's one of the ways that you can put a thin layer of material onto a subject. And they make a film, they can make it any size so it can recover a big painting or not. And they've tested it. And in the tests, they've demonstrated that this membrane is impermeable to moisture and that also the oxidizing agents and harmful pollutions in the air cannot reach the painting. It also absorbs a lot of harmful UV ultraviolet radiation, and particularly important, these graphene coatings are relatively easy to remove without damaging the surface of the artwork. So I think this development is going to change the art preservation area massively and will have the effect of protecting many precious pieces of art.
Any thoughts?
Yes,
Well, for,
I think that this is good news for the art market because I work with imaging systems. When a museum lends a masterpiece to another museum, what they do, they take a picture of the artwork with very high pixel density. When the artwork comes back, they look at it because there could be tiny little chips that have come off the painting and they have to restore that. With this technology here, it seems that makes it much easier to protect a painting when they lend it out to another country, another museum.
Interesting.
it just seems to me that this technology will be more useful for outdoor advertising. You know, the fine paintings like the ones that were made 2 or 3 centuries ago typically are not hanging outside and are typically not subject to direct degradation because of sunlight or anything like that. More smoke and other things that people do indoors. And I know in Holland anyway, they have developed a technique, and it takes a long time for each painting, but to bring paintings back to life the way they are or the way they were originally. And it seems to me that that is probably the way to go, rather than to cover the dirt that has accumulated over the years with another film, because you cover the dirt as well.
The other thing that's interesting is there's an outfit in Australia named Bioceuticals that are selling a graphene product called Second Skin. And the idea is similar to this, where they're saying that it will remove wrinkles and remove bags under your eyes. And the whole thing, it's sort of like the 3M coatings you put on the front of your sports car to prevent rock chips.
Uh-huh.
We can get a graphene wrap, and it'll come in any color or camouflage you'd like. And we can be like a chameleon if we want.
I love that idea.
Yes.
That's better than using tinted contact lenses, I can tell you.
yes.
Yeah.
If you put too much on, you know, who needs body bags?
John, going back to what you said, I've seen in Holland masterpieces with glass in front to protect them. If the graphene layer could do that, they don't have the glass that creates reflections, that would also enhance the viewing of the masterpiece.
Yeah, but what I was saying is that some of the works of art that have been around, like in Holland and like in Italy and so on, they've gotten dirty, and that dirt is that needs to be removed first. And it may take one person as much as a year's work, very painstaking work, to bring a painting back to life. Although the results are rather staggering. I know that some years ago I was in Amsterdam and saw about maybe 3 or 4 paintings that were treated that way. I can see that when they might want to take a chance putting a film over it, but I'm not so sure if I were an owner of one of those works of art that I even want to try and put even glass. It is unbelievable the way these paintings look in the way they were originally made.
The other thing is it might be good for outdoor murals, like John mentioned.
Yeah.
A lot of these outdoor things are artistic, but they're not protected.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see that they limited the type of painting to any particular paint, oil or whatever. But I mean, it's pretty routine to just to put glass over watercolors and over some of the other two-dimensional works of art that are created now. And I viewed this as simply something that would go on top of any painting, you know, when it goes on display, so that we're not talking about it as a restorative thing so much as a preservative.
Right, right. And even the paintings that are behind glass still are subject to damage from light and ultraviolet rays. And so, uh, anyway, it's a big issue. It may be a good solution. The fact that you can take it off without damaging the piece of artwork, to me, makes it a lot more highly recommended.
Anyway, congratulations on finding an article on graphene that really hits us all.
That's right. Uh-oh, we're not hearing Fred.
I
And
bet you can hear me now.
we
Yes.
can hear you now.
Moving on to space, what's this about Mars glowing auroras that have been snapped by the Hope spacecraft?
Well, this is another story I think it's interesting to me for several different reasons. The picture on the left here is an image that is actually made by the Hope spacecraft of an aurora on Mars. And the Hope spacecraft is interesting in its own. You know, that's the one that is put up by the United Arab Emirates. So it's yet one of these other countries that is in space, and the UAE is in space without having a space industry. So they've done it all from things that you can buy in the available world space market. So the picture on the right is an artist's image of how the aurora would look. The picture on the left is one that was taken of the ultraviolet emissions, and it was seen by a very special kind of camera on board that mission. One of the things that is interesting to me about this photograph is that uh, this does not relate at all to the mission of the Hope craft. The main science mission is to focus on the atmosphere of the planet, not on its magnetism. And these images came as just an extra bonus. You know, so they're off looking for one thing and they get something else that is unexpected. And until I saw this image, I didn't realize that there were auroras on Mars. Did any of you guys raise your hands for all of you who knew about these? I don't see any hands going up there either.
Last time I was there, I didn't see any.
Okay, you're probably too far south. And
Uh,
so anyway, it was one of these serendipitous discoveries that happens when you're doing science. The auroras actually were first detected by the European Space Agency Mars Express satellite in 2004. And so they've known about these for a while, but these are by far the best images that are there. Also the scientists are interested in these because they think these auroras show the present outline of Mars's magnetic field. And Mars's magnetic field has collapsed substantially in the last few billion years. And they think that maybe the collapse of its magnetic fields is the reason why Mars lost all its atmosphere. And so, uh, again, it's just this is a case where they not only got a snazzy photograph, but they're actually doing good science, and that kind of science is maybe going to lead them to a deeper understanding of Mars and atmospheres and magnetic fields and stuff like that.
Any thoughts?
One of the reasons Mars may have a lower, like almost non-existent magnetic field is because it's smaller and cooler than the Earth and doesn't have the same molten center that the Earth does. And a lot of the convection currents in the center of the Earth are responsible for the magnetic field that the Earth has. So,
Right. I think the what they're able to see of the magnetic field now is because of kind of where the rocks were when the molten part of uh, Mars solidified. And so that solidification is when the magnetic field went way down. And so what they're seeing is almost the remains of the Mars plate tectonics.
Well, Richard, if we're moving on, what's this about we've wasted so much time concerned with whether we pull carbon out of the atmosphere?
Well, this is from an Australian paleoclimatologist, and I have to observe that there are a lot of different kind of jobs now than I knew about as a kid. So imagine uh, becoming a paleoclimatologist. I don't know any first grader who, when you ask him, what do you want to do when you grow up? They're going to say, I want to be a paleoclimatologist. I know at that age I was saying I want to be an aeronautical engineer because it was something my father was interested in, and I had a little bit of speech impediment, and when I said it, it was so cute that everybody laughed. But anyway, that's on another side. So, what this paleoclimatologist says is that the world needs to develop new technologies to suck excess CO2 out of the air because efforts to cut emissions are just moving too slowly. This is an opinion that I now share with him and have come to that opinion in the last couple of years uh, doing hot science and learning more about it. Uh, he thinks to reach carbon neutrality just by reducing emissions is likely to be so incredibly difficult that other technologies will be needed, and that it's reasonable to think that we can create these new technologies and also then rejuvenate the biospheres. And there's plenty of potential if we do this well, potentials for new companies and industries to be created that are successful in making money and giving jobs. So far, the direct air capture methods that we have, the technological solution, these are all still at the early stage in development and not much has been deployed. There have been a few installations in the US and in Canada and Europe that have been installed, but it's still a minor effort. There are other methods, of course, including mass planting of trees, though some people are saying that's not so good. I'm not sure what all the arguments are there. There's another area that is promising, and they call this blue carbon. And these are approaches that do things like build up mangrove forests and have new beds of seagrass and kelp in the ocean to pull out carbon there. The doctor here says we need all our weapons. And there is considerable concern across the climate community that emissions are not being reduced fast enough, and that because of this now, he's saying, like other people that I have read, are saying the hopes of keeping global warming at or below 1.5 degree now appears unachievable, and the next milestone is 2 degrees C, and we haven't been doing the things that we need to do yet to even uh, maintain that limit, so that 2 degrees C still remains in play. So this is a serious guy who's saying we have to do more than what is very difficult for us, that is to stop putting the emissions into the air. We have to find successful ways that we can scale up to be planet-wide tools to pull the carbon out of the air.
Any thoughts?
Instead of, or in addition to planting trees, if they plant bamboo, bamboo is actually more efficient than trees to absorb CO2.
Bamboo grows faster is the big thing.
Yeah, the other thing is it generates 30 to 35% more oxygen into the atmosphere, and it's more flexible. So if you had along streets and other places, bamboo is also, if you have a strong wind, they give more than a tree that
Yes.
just breaks.
Yes. Also, with bamboo, there are people now who have companies that are making bicycles out of bamboo.
And voting ballots as well. At least that's what the one political party says.
Okay, of course.
One thing about bamboo, of course, it doesn't grow everywhere.
But if it grows where you are, you have to do your best to confine it, because bamboo will want to grow everywhere. I had bamboo in my yard in one of the places that I lived, and it was a constant battle to protect the yard from all the bamboo.
Really?
It's like Johannes was saying, bamboo grows fast.
Yeah, and bamboo is a grass, so
Yes.
that's why it grows so fast.
It's just tall grass.
Would it grow here, like where we're living?
I don't know. I haven't seen any here.
I haven't either, that's why.
It'll grow in your house, but it won't grow outside.
No.
Maybe once everything warms up, it will.
Okay. Well, here where it was growing for me was California. The weather is not so different in the Bay Area that it is here.
No, but we're about 5,000 feet above sea level.
Right. So anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we can Google it.
Okay.
That'll grow it.
70% of the carbon is actually taken out by the ocean, not by land. It's all the plankton and all the algae and other growth in the ocean that takes out the 65 to 70% of the carbon.
Yes.
So it's very important to protect the oceans.
Yes, absolutely. That's why I like what they talk about, the blue carbon solutions, because those deal with protecting the ocean and using the stuff you're talking about.
So, Richard, what's this about a how-to guide for creating mouse human embryos that are chimeric? What's this all about?
Well, there. This is another story that I think has a variety of interesting parts. So, at the University of Buffalo, about a year ago, they demonstrated that it's possible to produce millions of mature human stem cells in mouse embryos. And they call these kind of entities that are made up of two different kinds of living matter chimeras. And uh, so what they did then recently is they published a how-to guide, a detailed description, so that if you want to make a mouse human chimera, you can just whip one up. And the thing is, the ability to produce millions of mature cells in a living organism uh, is actually a critical process, they believe, for the ultimate process of stem cells as treatments or cures for many human diseases. And uh, to produce these mature cells, the most effective way that they know so far is to take primed human cells and basically insert these into mouse embryos. And then as the mouse embryo grows, it grows the human stem cells as well, so they can develop and you can grow a lot more of them and you can have all the stem cells you need. And this paper is going to let scientists all over the world use this new platform. And what they want to use it for is to study the human diseases. And this platform gives people all over the world what they need to study the particular kind of disease that they're interested in. And they can study it basically in living human cells, which gives you a much better picture of its use than trying to look at mouse stem cells, for example. And uh, they think it'll let us study basically any inborn condition that humans have. And this is a step-by-step protocol, and it's going to help other scientists generate these chimeras and study the human diseases of which they are experts. These stem cells then that are generated through this can be manipulated either genetically or pharmacologically and give valuable information about human diseases and things like this. And there is a much bigger potential here than just the ability to study disease. The next potential in this process looks like it may be the ability to generate human organs and deal with this drastic shortage of human organs that are available for transplant. If they can do this in a mouse embryo, then they can do it They believe in things like pig embryos and then do things like in the pig, use stem cells and grow a new heart. So if for those people who need a new heart, as long as they're not Muslim, then there are going to be heart replacements available that are grown naturally. And anyway, so this, they believe, once we really understand how to do this, we're going to be able to generate human cells, tissues, and organs as we need them in a completely artificial system. And the ability to do that is going to bring fundamental changes about in the way that we deal with human diseases. And so they think research using chimeras is a bridge that must be crossed to reach that possibility. Now, of course, there are some people and some religious people that hold the view of how sacred is human life, and I'm not sure yet what the right to lifers think about human mice chimera, but I bet they're against it.
Any thoughts?
I think stem cell technology is also one of the best hopes to be able to improve people with macular degeneration because it's a way of repairing the retina. So it might bring hope to a lot of people who have problems with macular degeneration.
Yes. And
And
so,
it
go.
may also help these researchers get around the laws in the US against using embryo cells for research.
For research, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There are also things that certainly I've heard about is they're working madly trying to figure out how to use stem cells to repair hearts after a heart attack because the heart attack kills heart muscle cells and left alone they never regrow and they believe that they will be able to do something with stem cells there as well.
Well, Richard, in the human story, we are talking about declining birth rates. And why is that good news for us?
Well, there are several reasons why it's good news. There also are a few reasons why to some it's alarming news. Fertility rates are falling across the globe, even in places like sub-Saharan Africa, where they still remain high, but they're dropping. And these lowering fertility rates are good for women, family, society, and the environment. So that sounds like a good combination. There are rumblings about this change, though, that are based on uh, fears about what happens when you don't have enough people. For example, China's decision recently to relax its two-child policy was because they felt like they didn't have enough children. They wanted more. So they don't like the declining birth rate. And, then there are fears about family lines just being erased. If you're the last one in your family, when you die, the family is gone. And diminishing powers in the superpowers when they don't have as many people to be able to support their position. Japan is one of the places that's going through this right now. And the other issue here is about our notions of what it takes to have a healthy, vibrant society. Most of these ideas are based on the past And if you look the 19th century approach, you needed lots of young people to operate the factories. But as time has passed, that's not true anymore. And more of the jobs that require stamina and strength, including fighting wars, are done by machines. And while the products you produce now, you don't have to sell them to your own people, you can sell them all over the world. And it turns out that nowadays there is no evidence that young workers are any more productive than older ones. 20 somethings and 50 somethings have different kinds of intelligence, but they're both productive. And in modern companies, you really need both kinds to be able to have a successful company. And so, if you really care about uh, human well being, then what you should pay attention to is GDP per person, not GDP per country. And when you look at it through that filter, one of the things that they have been able to demonstrate now is that GDP per person and therefore living standards are the highest when fertility rates fall just below replacement level, which is about 2.1 births per woman. And it looks like the sweet spot is around 1.6 births per woman, or maybe a little less. If you get below that or above that, then the societies start to run into different kind of problems. South Korea is afraid of this right now. They have zero point 0.8 births per woman, and they're not able to staff their factories with new workers. China is worried about it. They're at 1.3 births per woman, and that's a little bit below the sweet spot. If you look at the European Union and the US, they are both hovering just about at the sweet spot, so things look good for them. And, it turns out for governments in the world, it there are not good ways to be able to force people to either have more children or less children. China had its decades long one child policy, but its fertility decline has not been dramatically steeper than elsewhere in East Asia. France also tried to encourage more births by giving large families financial incentives, and that hasn't made any difference in the birth rates. The general issue is as child mortality drops and women's health and education improve, then fertility rates go down. And this has been pretty much in every society all across the world. So it's not cultural. And parents choose to invest more time, money, and love in fewer children. And so this is a sign of change that's coming. They're still talking about the world's population going from 7 billion to 10 billion in the next 20 or 30 years. I see some forecasts forecasting less growth, but they're still talking about adding billions of people even at these reduced birth rates. And as has been said here again and again, the root of a lot of the problems we see in the world, it looks like it's just too many people. So this is evidence that some of this stuff is going in the right way. This is another question, is will it go in the right way fast enough to save us and our poor planet?
Any thoughts?
Well, if we don't do it, Mother Nature probably will.
Yes. The Gaia theory, if you will.
And there's another issue too, as the population ages, the ages of all these different fractions change, and
Yes.
we wind up with 50% of the people over 65, and you wonder how that's going to work out.
Right. There are a bunch of related issues. One of the related issues there is how long should you work?
Yeah. Well, I think they've pushed back the retirement ages in some countries in Europe.
They have, but they haven't pushed it back to say, okay, 80.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm 77 and I still feel mentally productive.
80 is the new 40.
Okay. Well, I hope so.
I'm 41.
Okay. Happy birthday.
Me too. So, Richard, moving on to our last story. What's this about near meat and meat being not nutritionally equivalent? What's that?
Well, one of these things is not like the other. And it turns out nowadays, plant-based meat substitute, particularly for beef, taste and chew remarkably similar to real beef. And if you look at the 13 items that are listed on USA Nutrition labels, vitamins, fats, and protein, it makes them seem pretty equivalent. And to really see the difference, you need to look and examine more deeply the nutritional content of these plant-based meat alternatives. And when you do that, it turns out that they are as different as, say, plants and animals. Meat substitute manufacturers now have gone to great lengths to make the plant-based product as meaty as possible, including doing things like adding iron-carrying molecules from soy and things to the meat substitute to increase the iron content, doing things like using beet, berry, and carrot extracts to substitute the bloodiness to make the texture right, and to do things like adding vitamin B12, which you lose if you give up the beef. And so by the time you're through with that, if you look at the food labels will look pretty similar. The food companies have worked very hard to make that the case. But if you look at it in terms of metabolites, which are the building blocks of the body's biochemistry, the human body uses about 100,000 of these different metabolites, and about half of these metabolites come from the food that we eat. The other half would be ones that the body generates themselves. And to show this, the consumer's reading of nutritional labels makes you think they're interchangeable, but they are not. Here, researchers compared samples of a popular plant-based meat alternative against grass-fed ground beef samples from a ranch in Idaho, and they found out that of the 190 metabolites that they measured, 171 of them had differences between plant-based meat and hoof-raised meat that were substantial. That is, 171 out of 190, that is about 90% of the metabolites were substantially different. For example, the beef contained 22 metabolites that were not there in the substitutes. The substitutes had 31 metabolites that are not there in red meat. And that a number of those metabolites that are not present in the plant-based protein are actually critical for things like managing in the body's inflammatory response and other immune uh, system responses. So the stuff that is left out is not unimportant things, but things that are actually important for the body and the brain's development. And so consumers tend now to treat these as nutritionally interchangeable, but that's not the case. So far, they can't really say one is better than the other because we don't yet know enough about food and what is truly important to the human body. We're trying to figure it out, but right now we just don't know. And if you are trying to have a healthy diet now, maybe the best solution is really a mix of those eating styles. What Carol and I have done in the last month is we're trying to move to a more plant-based eating style, but that it still includes, a couple of days a week where we're eating in the old way, eating chicken or sometimes a hamburger. And, I think for me anyway, what I believe now after reading this is that though we're trying to move to a plant-based diet, I think we're still going to keep with a hybrid diet because there are things in the meat portion of our diet that the body needs that it's going to have more trouble getting from an entirely plant-based diet. And so I don't know what the answer is now, but what I'm going to do is try some moderate intermediate behavior. And it's not really like me to be moderate, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Any thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. I have here a label
Okay.
from Beyond Beef.
Beyond
Okay? We
beef.
bought this a week or so ago at Costco. I think probably subliminally in my mind was when I saw this there, I'd never seen it before, was all of the talk that we've done in this program about plant-based foods and so on and so forth. But I was so disappointed when I went to the label and I looked at the label and I tried to figure out, what was in it and what was good about it and what I was missing from it. And I had heard that it had a lot of fat in it, and I think it does have a lot of fat in it. It says it's 25% of your daily value, which I think is a lot.
Right.
But on the other hand, I don't have real beef that often either, so I don't know how much in a regular hamburger, what percentage it is there either. But the real point is that it lists only the ingredients that are in beef. It doesn't list any of the ingredients that are not in beef. So it doesn't tell you the good that you're getting from it. And I found when I looked at this, why, it tasted fine. I was really happy about that. It tasted fine. Okay, we'll eat them all. We're not throwing them away. But why did I buy this? Because it cost twice as much as beef, and what's the good value of it? I don't know. It's not, well, Johannes has an idea.
No, just a comment. If we can reduce the amount of beef and cattle, isn't that very good for the environment?
Yes, yes. So that's one of the reasons why to do it. It's all of these things are not simple issues, though. And again, I had heard about I've been interested in the vegetarian diet for a long time, and one of the things I understand is there is an amino acid that is in like eggs and chicken, choline, that is critical for your brain. And that in a vegan diet, anyway, there are almost no sources for that amino acid. And so the long-term effect is not so good for your brain. I think having a partial vegetarian approach like Carol and I'll take mean that we're going to still have those advantages. Part also of the advantage from a plant-based diet is it's much better for your heart. And I like it being better for the heart. But it's not digital. In that it's not something that is just switched on and off based on your diet. The benefits start to happen for your heart. For example, if you start with 1 day with no meat a week, even then already you start to accrue benefits. So I hate to say it, but I may have to be moderate.
Well, I've decided that what I'm going to use this for is to when I make my wonderful lasagna recipe for my vegetarian friends, then I will still feel comfortable in serving it to them.
That's good. Now, they're getting very close to acceptable chicken. They've been working on that madly, and the problem with chicken has been texture, because chicken has more kind of fiber in it, and it has this texture that if you don't have it there, you're not happy. And they figured out how to do that. So next year, the big thing is gonna be plant-based chicken.
Maybe.
Well, it'll be the big thing because the marketing guys are going to market the heck out of it, because this is for sure something they're going to be able to sell.
And it will be a really big thing for the chicken poultry farmers.
Oh, yes. They won't like it. It's said that in the future, the anthropologists will call this age the age of the chicken, because in the garbage that we leave, there are more chicken bones than anything else on the planet.
So thanks very much, Richard. It's been a good session, and thanks to everybody for participating. And once again, we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Okay,
Adios.
Thank you.
Adios.
It's something to think about. Thank you.